The rule came out on a calm morning, without any warning, without any build-up, and without any clear reason. A simple message was broadcast across the galactic network. Humans were not allowed near the abandoned research zone at the far edge of the outer roots. No extra explanation. No background. Just a direct line saying that humans must stay away. People across different worlds reacted almost instantly. Some read the message and blinked in confusion. Others burst into laughter the moment they saw it. Many didn't even finish reading the full announcement before making jokes about it. The idea seemed ridiculous. A ban on humans? For that place? Why? What could possibly make humans so important that they had to be restricted from entering some quiet, forgotten location nobody had visited in ages? On public streams, panels filled with commentators sharing jokes. One person said it sounded like a dramatic movie teaser. Another said it was probably a political stunt to get attention. A few even claimed it must be some kind of mistranslation. People enjoyed making fun of it because the message didn't come with a story behind it. And anything that lacked a story became an easy target for humor. Across these panels, you could hear laughter layered over more laughter. Some viewers typed comments, adding jokes about how humans must have some secret space trick the ban was trying to hide. Others said the rule was pointless because humans were too busy dealing with their own daily life challenges to care about a strange zone drifting in the middle of nowhere. The overall reaction was simple. No one took it seriously, but behind all the noise, a few quiet voices refused to join the laughter. They weren't panicking. They weren't making predictions. They were just concerned. Analysts who studied unusual events noticed something odd. The message didn't look like a political stunt. It had an urgency hidden inside it, something that felt too real to be a joke. The timing seemed strange. There had been no recent events in that region, no known dangers, no reports of anything unusual. Yet the message was issued with a tone that reminded them of emergency directives. Most people ignored that part. Entertainment always traveled faster than caution. Clips of the announcement were edited into funny videos. Some creators added dramatic music, pretending the ban was the start of some exaggerated galactic conspiracy. Others simply repeated the news in a mocking voice, which made their viewers laugh even more. The strange thing was that humans themselves didn't react strongly. Those who saw the message were confused, but they weren't offended. They didn't fight back or complain or demand an explanation. They were used to being underestimated by the larger galaxy, so this didn't feel very different. Some humans joked about it themselves, saying things like they must have done something in their sleep that caused the ban. But even those jokes didn't last long. Humans are practical. If someone didn't want them in a place, they simply wouldn't go. Still, the ban felt odd to them. It wasn't a place they were interested in. It wasn't valuable. It wasn't rich with resources. It wasn't even beautiful. It was a lonely, quiet zone filled with drifting metal remains, old fragments, and forgotten structures left from a time no one understood. Why would humans specifically be banned from something like that? The mystery hung in the air, unsolved and unexplained. Meanwhile, the rest of the galaxy moved on quickly. People enjoyed the distraction, especially on worlds where daily life felt repetitive. Something unusual, something funny, something easy to tease, of course, it became trending. Every talk panel wanted to mention it. Every casual conversation found a way to bring it up. A new wave of jokes spread. Beware of humans. Don't let humans near your old junk. That zone must be allergic to humans. The jokes became a form of entertainment. Even the people making the jokes didn't genuinely think humans were a threat. The idea was too strange, too far-fetched. Humans were known to be curious, emotional, stubborn, and surprisingly adaptable, but dangerous in some ancient, mysterious way. No one believed that. People thought of humans as the younger group in the galactic circle, still learning, still figuring things out, still building things that sometimes worked and sometimes exploded at the wrong moment. Because of this image, the ban felt even more absurd to most people. Why restrict the group everyone thought of as harmless? But not everyone laughed. The few analysts who understood the tone of emergency alerts still felt unsettled. They replayed the message many times, listening carefully. Every time they heard it, it sounded like fear, not fear of humans causing harm, but fear of what might happen if humans entered that region at all. Something about that quiet zone held a secret, and whatever the secret was, it seemed directly connected to humanity. That was the part that didn't make sense. One analyst quietly noted that the rule looked like something written in a rush, as if someone discovered something they didn't expect and issued a quick order before thinking about how strange it sounded. Another noticed that the ban didn't mention danger, only prohibition. That was unusual. Normally, if a place was dangerous, warnings would include safety instructions or evacuation advice. This one didn't. It didn't say the region was unsafe. It didn't say the zone contained hazards. It only said humans couldn't enter. That was all. The galaxy brushed off these concerns easily. It was easier to enjoy jokes than to think deeply. It was easier to treat the announcement as something amusing rather than something to be studied. People kept sharing short clips of the rule, turning it into a trend. Reactions spread faster than thoughts. The zone itself remained quiet. It had been abandoned for years, untouched and uninteresting to most travelers. The structures inside were old metal shapes that drifted slowly like silent bones. The place looked harmless, simple, and dead. Nothing about it suggested danger. Nothing about it hinted at secrets. It was the kind of location you would pass without even looking out the window. And maybe that was why the ban felt even more confusing. If the zone had held active hazards or visible threats, the rule might have made sense. But banning humans from a silent graveyard of metal? It seemed too strange to be taken seriously. For many people, this was just another odd moment that would vanish with time, like a rumor that went nowhere. They assumed the ban would be lifted eventually, once people realized how silly it sounded. They didn't think anyone would bother to test it, because who would waste time visiting such an unimportant place? But some explorers always searched for a challenge. Some people were drawn to mysteries, not because they cared about breaking rules, but because they wanted answers. A group like that would soon start talking in private, whispering about what the ban really meant. Not mocking it, not teasing it, but wondering why the galaxy had suddenly decided to keep humans away from a place no one cared about. At this moment, the laughter was still loud across many worlds. People still thought of the ban as a joke. The message continued to spread in the form of clipped reactions and short videos. Audiences enjoyed every bit of it, but the same viewers who laughed now would soon go silent. The footage that changed everything had not yet been recorded. The discovery that rewrote their laughter into fear had not yet been revealed. The truth that connected humanity to something ancient and powerful still slept quietly inside that zone. For now, everyone laughed. They didn't know that the silence was coming. They didn't know that the ban had a reason. They didn't know that once the real story appeared on their screens, no one would joke about it ever again. The group that decided to go toward the ban zone did not start with a loud announcement. There was no dramatic moment, no argument, no rebellion. It happened in a very quiet and natural way. A few people from different worlds were sitting together after a long work shift, talking the way travelers always do. At first, the conversation was normal, sharing stories, small jokes, plans for their next route. But slowly, the topic shifted toward the ban. One person said the rule felt unnecessary. Another said it felt strange. The human in the group only shrugged and laughed a little, because even they didn't know why a simple message could turn into such a huge galactic joke. Someone else said that if the place was really so dangerous, The band would have included warnings, maps, or at least a safety alert. But it didn't. The more they talked, the more curious they became. Curiosity doesn't always explode. Sometimes it grows quietly, like a small flame. That's what happened here. The group wasn't trying to break rules. They weren't trying to be heroes. They simply wanted to understand why something so odd had become such a big topic across the galaxy. One of them finally said, "Why don't we go see it ourselves?" The suggestion hung in the air for a moment. The others exchanged looks. It felt risky, not because they feared danger, but because they feared looking foolish if they turned back with nothing to show. But then someone said the most convincing sentence of all, "We'll record everything. If it's nothing, everyone will know. If it's something, we'll find out." Recording everything made the idea feel official, almost like an investigation rather than a dare. The human in the group didn't object. If the galaxy was laughing at humans, maybe it was time to understand what they were laughing about. With that simple agreement, the plan was made. They prepared their small exploration craft, checked their equipment twice, and loaded high-quality recording devices so the rest of the galaxy could see everything clearly. Before leaving, they checked the band message again. It still said the same thing. Humans were not allowed inside. Nothing more. No reasons. No warnings. No explanations. That made the group even more curious. The journey to the zone took several hours. The trip was calm, with soft engine noise filling the background. The humans sat near the small window, watching stars slip by. They didn't say much, but everyone could sense the natural tension. Even though no one expected real danger, the uncertainty made the air feel heavier as they approached the outer routes. They saw the first sign of the abandoned zone. It didn't look dramatic. It was quiet, empty, and colorless. Old metal fragments floated in slow circles, like forgotten memories drifting through space. The group paused the ship for a moment and stared. One person said softly, "That's it. That's the place the galaxy is talking about?" Another let out a short breath, half relieved and half disappointed. The scene looked normal, calm, nothing dangerous. But the moment they crossed the boundary of the zone, the ship's sensors flickered. At first, it was very small, just a brief flicker on the screen. Then another. Then a low pulse, almost like a quiet echo. The crew leaned in closer. The human frowned, feeling something strange in their chest. It wasn't fear. It was more like a soft pressure, as if the space around them remembered something old. The others didn't feel the same thing. They only saw the readings. Temperature shifts. Small gravitational ripples. Signals that didn't belong to any known pattern. The human asked if something was wrong with the ship, but the crew checked everything twice. The systems were fine. The zone itself was causing the reactions. Someone whispered, "This place shouldn't be doing that. It looks dead." But it wasn't dead. It wasn't alive either. It was something in between, a space holding a story that had not been told. They pushed forward slowly, keeping the recording devices on. The ship moved deeper into the heart of the zone, where the fragments grew larger. Some pieces looked like metal frameworks, bent and twisted into shapes no one could recognize. Others were cleaner, almost sliced with precision. Many pieces had burn marks, but not from fire, something hotter, something stranger. As they drifted closer, the sensors flashed again, stronger this time. The human in the group felt a sudden weight, like the space was pushing against them. They put a hand on the console, steadying themselves. No one else felt it. Only them. Someone asked, "Are you okay?" The human nodded slowly, even though they didn't understand what they were feeling. It wasn't pain. It wasn't fear. It was something deeper, like memory without actual memory, like stepping into a place they should not belong. Yet somehow did. The group recorded everything. they found a set of broken pillars, each one taller than the ship. The pillars were covered in marks that looked like scratches at first. But when the crew turned the lights toward them, they realized the marks were shaped like hands, human-shaped hands, but larger, deeper, glowing faintly as if heat had been trapped inside the metal long ago. The entire group fell silent. The human's chest tightened again. They reached toward the screen displaying the marks, not touching it, but almost as if their hand was trying to match the shape. The size difference was huge. Whatever had left those prints was far taller than any modern human. One of the crew members zoomed the camera in. The prints were not carved. They were burned in, fused into the metal with incredible force. The material had melted around the fingers. Something extremely powerful had pressed against it. No one laughed now. For the first time in their mission, they felt a quiet fear, not the kind that makes someone scream, but the kind that makes them speak softly because the air feels heavier. The human whispered, almost without meaning to, "Why does it feel familiar?" The others exchanged glances. They knew the human didn't mean it literally. It was impossible for them to have seen anything like this before. But the feeling was real. They traveled deeper. The zone grew stranger. More structures appeared, ruins twisted into shapes no language could describe. Some pieces looked like remains of machines. Others looked like parts of walls, melted and folded over each other. The whole place felt like the aftermath of a battle, so intense it erased entire stories from history. Every time they entered a new section, the sensors reacted. Small pulses, faint vibrations, shadows moving in light patterns. It felt like the zone remembered something ancient and was replaying fragments of that memory in ways the machines could detect. The human felt the pressure grow stronger, but still no actual danger reached them. It was like the zone was watching them. Not the crew, just the human. The group recorded everything carefully, knowing the galaxy would demand evidence. They spoke softly, describing each discovery. Their voices carried a mixture of awe and confusion. They still didn't understand why humans specifically were banned, but after seeing the handprints, they were no longer sure the ban was a joke. The deeper they went, the quieter the human became. They stayed close to the window, eyes focused on the ruins passing by. Something inside them felt awake, even though they didn't know why. It wasn't a memory. It wasn't recognition. It was something older, like instinct, like heritage, like a silent whisper carried through generations without anyone noticing. The others felt the change in atmosphere. What began as a simple exploration now felt like uncovering a story no one was ready to hear. They continued moving, not rushing, not stopping, recording every moment because they sensed they were getting close to something bigger. And then they saw it, a massive structure floating in the center of the zone, broken nearly in half, but still radiating presence. It wasn't like the other fragments. It was enormous, almost the size of a small city, and shaped in a way that made their stomachs tighten. The humans stared at it without blinking. The structure felt familiar to them in a way they couldn't explain. The crew turned the cameras toward it. The sensors reacted instantly, louder than ever. The ship trembled, not from danger, but from recognition, like the zone had been waiting for them. No one spoke for a long time. They didn't know it yet, but the footage they were recording would soon make the entire galaxy silent. For now, they kept moving forward, unaware that the truth hidden in that zone was about to change everything people believed about humans. The closer the group moved toward the massive broken structure, the more the silence around them seemed to thicken. It was not an ordinary silence. It felt heavy, like the air inside the ship was slowly changing. Everyone sensed it, but the human felt it the strongest. They stopped the ship at a safe distance and let the camera lights sweep across the structure. Even though it was torn apart and floating, it still felt like something important. The metal, was not a normal shade. It was darker, almost like it had absorbed some kind of energy long ago and never released it. One of the crew members whispered that it looked like an old warship, but not like anything they had ever seen. It was too big, too thick, too powerful for the time period people believed it came from. The markings across its surface were strange. Some were burnt, some were scratched, some looked like symbols, but none of them matched the signs of known civilizations. The humans stared at one section of the ship for a long time. It had a wide burn mark in the shape of a handprint. Not a small handprint, not like the marks left by the damaged pillars earlier. This one was huge, stretching across a metal plate almost the size of a room. The burn was deep, melted into the ship's body, as if something had pressed against it with incredible force. The human felt a strong pressure in their chest again, stronger than before. They didn't say anything at first. They just watched. Their breathing slowed. The others asked gently if they were okay, and the human nodded. Even though they couldn't explain what they were feeling, they zoomed the camera in closer. The handprint had 5 long fingers, clearly shaped like a human hand, but longer, wider, stronger. The edges glowed faintly, like they were holding old heat that had never cooled. It looked like the metal had once been close to melting completely. Someone said in a quiet voice, "This isn't possible. Humans never built ships like this. Humans were never this big." The human didn't reply. They were confused themselves. Something deep inside them responded to the sight of the handprint. Not with fear, but with an unexplained connection. As if the metal remembered something their mind had forgotten. The ship moved slowly around the structure, recording every angle. The sensors were reacting almost constantly now, sending out small alerts. Nothing harmful, nothing dangerous, just constant signals picking up invisible echoes in the air. Every echo felt like a memory replaying itself, but without sound or clear image. When the ship drifted past what looked like a shattered corridor, the lights revealed something unexpected. Shadows. Not ordinary shadows cast by the ship's lights. These shadows moved in patterns, almost like silhouettes walking inside the old structure. They weren't solid. They flickered like old recordings, appearing and disappearing in slow, ghost-like motions. The crew froze. The human inhaled sharply and leaned closer to the glass. The cameras automatically locked onto the movement. The recording captured long shapes, tall figures with human-like outlines. Their posture looked powerful, almost warrior-like, as if they were marching through the corridor in a formation. But they weren't alive. They shifted like memories stuck in the air, replaying the same motion again and again. One of the crew whispered, "Those look like people." The human didn't blink. But not like us. The figures were taller than any modern human. Their shoulders were wider. Their steps were firm and controlled. They looked like soldiers preparing for something huge. Even though their faces couldn't be seen clearly, their shapes were unmistakable. Everyone felt a chill. The zone wasn't just holding ruins. It was holding a part of history that no one remembered. The ship moved a little deeper, and as it passed another broken section, the cameras caught a different kind of shadow. This one wasn't walking. It was raising one arm, like someone giving a signal or preparing to strike. The hand looked almost identical to the burnt handprint on the metal plate's outside dot. The human felt a pulse of something, deep inside, something that didn't feel like fear or pain. It felt like instinct awakening. The crew didn't know what to say, so no one spoke for a long moment. The only sounds were the soft hums of the ship and the beeping sensors reacting to everything around them. The ship drifted into a larger, open area in the center of the structure. It looked like a hall or a meeting ground, but it was broken and twisted. Large pieces of metal floated around, slowly turning. In the center of the hall, the cameras captured more shadows, many more. These weren't walking. They were frozen in positions that looked like they were in the middle of a desperate fight. Figures with human-shaped bodies facing something massive. Something that wasn't fully visible, but cast a looming presence in the shadows. The shapes of the tall, human-like figures looked brave, but there was also a sense of loss in their frozen forms. One person whispered, "What happened here?" No one knew, but everyone felt that whatever happened, it was powerful enough to tear apart the entire structure. The humans suddenly felt a cold sensation run down their spine. They didn't see a shadow. They felt it. A presence, like a silent heartbeat, echoing through the hall. It wasn't dangerous. It wasn't hostile. It was sad, old, heavy, like a forgotten memory asking to be remembered. They put a hand on the console gently, steadying themselves. The others saw the expression on their face, a mixture of confusion and connection, and understood something was happening inside them that none of them could explain. The ship circled the hall slowly, letting the cameras record everything. The shadows flickered more clearly now, like the presence inside the ship's sensors awakened them. One shadow figure moved its arm in a way that looked like a signal to evacuate or retreat. Another one looked like it was shielding someone. The movements repeated in a loop, like a recording stuck between past and present. The human whispered, "This place remembers something." The crew didn't know how to respond. But when they looked at the human's face, they saw something strange, something like recognition in their eyes, but not from memory. From instinct, from something built deep into their being, they continued exploring. And after a few minutes, the cameras caught something even more shocking. Near the far end of the hall, on a broken wall fragment, they saw symbols carved into the metal. Not machine-made carvings, handmade. Human hands. The writing wasn't in any known language, but the shapes looked like attempts at communication, as if someone long ago tried to leave a message behind. The carvings were deep, as if the person who made them had pressed with incredible force. The humans stared at the symbols and felt their heart beat faster. The shapes felt familiar in a way they couldn't explain. Someone asked quietly, "Do you understand it?" The humans shook their heads slowly, but their eyes didn't leave the carvings. Not with the mind, but something about it feels human. They moved the ship even closer. The edges of the symbols glowed faintly under the camera light. The crew recorded every detail, knowing the galaxy would need proof. The symbols were unlike anything from modern human history. They were sharp, ancient, full of emotion. The kind of writing someone might carve during a moment of desperate struggle. As the ship turned, the sensors suddenly spiked. The screen lit up with readings. The shadows flickered brighter, almost as if reacting to the human's presence. The entire hall felt alive with a memory trying to break through. The human placed a hand over their chest. They felt a strong pull, like a magnet, like something calling them. It wasn't dangerous, but it was overwhelming, like being reminded of a story they had never heard but somehow belonged to. The others realized then that the ban wasn't about keeping explorers out. It wasn't even about protecting the zone. It was about protecting the galaxy from discovering something about humans that no one was prepared to face. The group didn't say it out loud, but the truth was becoming clear. This place wasn't just ruins. It wasn't just shadows. It wasn't just old metal. It was a battlefield. A battlefield where beings shaped like humans had once fought. Something unimaginable, and the zone remembered them. The human in the group didn't know it yet, but the footage they were recording would soon show the galaxy why humans had been banned, and why the laughter would soon turn into silence. The group didn't leave the zone right away. Even though they were shaken, they stayed long enough to record every part of what they had seen. When they finally turned the ship around, no one spoke. The silence inside the small cabin wasn't empty. It was heavy, full of thoughts that were too large for words. The humans sat still, staring at the massive broken structure fading behind them. They didn't blink much. They didn't move much. It felt like something inside them was still back there in that hole, right beside those tall shadows fighting enemies the crew couldn't fully see. The others watched the human more than they watched the controls. It was hard not to notice the change in them. When the ship crossed back into normal space, beyond the boundary of the zone, the sensors finally calmed. The pressure that had been crushing the human's chest eased. They took a deep breath like they had been underwater the entire time. One person whispered, "We have to send the footage." Another replied, "Everyone needs to see this." No one disagreed. They transferred all the recordings into a large file, checked it twice to make sure nothing was corrupted, and sent it directly to the coalition channels and public networks. It wasn't meant to cause panic. They just wanted the truth to be known. They had gone into the zone expecting a harmless mystery. Instead, they found something that changed the way they looked at the galaxy and at humans. The transmission took a few minutes to reach the nearest relay station. Then it spread quickly, like sparks jumping from one wire to another. It reached officials, researchers, civilians, commentators, and even the people who had mocked the ban on humans. At first, the reaction was the same everywhere: confusion. People paused their work, turned up the screen brightness, leaned forward, and watched the footage unfold. The video began with the ruined fragments around the zone, the quiet drifting pieces of metal. That part didn't shock anyone. It looked old and harmless. But when the footage moved deeper and showed the pillars with the glowing handprints, reactions changed immediately. Viewers leaned closer. Many paused the video there, rewound it, zoomed in, and stared. Some said the shape of the hand was too human. Others said it couldn't be human at all. But no one laughed. The footage continued. The shadows inside the corridors appeared next. When the galaxy saw those tall, human-shaped figures moving like soldiers, every debate channel fell silent. Hosts who usually made loud jokes suddenly stopped talking mid-sentence. People across different worlds felt their skin rise with chills. Comment sections slowed down. Streaming platforms reported a drop in chat messages. Public forums went quiet. It was the kind of silence that only appears when people see something that doesn't fit into their understanding of the world. And then came the hole. The shadows froze in mid-battle. The giant handprint melted into the metal. The writing carved into the wall with such force that even the recording picked up the cracks around each symbol. The moment this part played, the entire galaxy, for a few seconds, stopped breathing. No one joked after that. The handprints were too large. The shadows were too clear. The writing felt too emotional, too desperate, too human. Researchers across multiple planets rushed to examine the footage frame by frame. They compared the shadow shapes to human body proportions. They analyzed the way the tall figures moved. They looked at the carvings and tried to find patterns. They checked the heat marks around the prints, measuring the intensity that would be required to melt metal like that. The more they studied it, the less they understood. Some researchers whispered that the beings in the footage looked like an ancient version of humans, stronger, taller, more resilient. Others argued that it was impossible. Humans didn't have that kind of past. They couldn't have built something so large and powerful. They couldn't have fought something so dangerous. But the evidence was right there. Even the human viewers felt uneasy. Some felt a strange sense of pride mixed with fear. Others felt disconnected, like they were looking at a forgotten branch of their own kind. Many felt the same pressure the human explorer felt inside the zone, even though they were only watching a screen. It was like the footage carried an echo of the zone's memory, a feeling that humans were tied to something older than anyone ever imagined. Across many worlds, people gathered in public places to watch the footage on large screens. Kids pressed their faces close. Adults stood with their arms crossed, not in doubt but in shock. Every so often someone would whisper, "How is this possible?" Or, "What happened to them?" But no one had answers. The most intense reaction came from the coalition leaders. They had known something about the zone. They had known the ban was serious. But even they hadn't seen these recordings. When they gathered for an emergency meeting and watched the footage together, no one dared to speak until the recording ended. One leader finally said, "This explains the ban." Another replied, "This explains more than the ban." Another added quietly, "This explains the fear." The ban had never been about humans causing trouble. It was about what humans might awaken by entering that place, or what that place might awaken inside humans. Some leaders suggested making the ban even stronger. Others suggested closing the entire surrounding system. A few more cautious ones suggested studying the ruins further, but without any humans near them. That suggestion caused an argument. Scientists wanted answers. Officials wanted safety. Citizens wanted the truth. But one thing was shared by everyone. No one mocked the ban again. No one laughed. Not after seeing what the shadows looked like. Not after seeing the melted handprints. Not after seeing the carvings. Meanwhile, the explorer ship was still traveling back home. They had no idea how massive the reaction had become. They didn't know that their footage had reached billions of people. They didn't know that the galaxy was in the middle of the biggest discussion it had seen in years. Inside the ship, the humans sat quietly, deep in thought. They kept replaying the images in their mind, the shadows walking, the marks, the symbols. They tried to understand why the place made them feel like they were connected to it. One of the crew members finally sat beside them and asked gently, "Do you feel any different now that we've left the zone?" The human hesitated, thinking carefully. "I don't know," they said softly. "It's like something touched me. Not physically, more like something inside me woke up." The others didn't treat them like a danger. They treated them with care, with respect, even with a bit of fear, but not the harmful kind. More like awe. Another person said, "Whatever those beings were, they fought something huge. And they looked like you." The human lowered their eyes. "I don't know who they were. I don't know what they faced." But it didn't feel like they were strangers. The crew exchanged worried glances. They didn't want their friend to feel overwhelmed. But they also couldn't pretend they didn't notice the connection the zone seemed to have with them. As they continued flying, messages began reaching their ship notification after notification. They didn't open them right away. They waited until the ship was stable and calm. Then they finally checked. The galaxy was calling them. Millions of views. Hundreds of messages. Requests from officials. Requests from media. Requests from every corner of known space. Some asked for interviews. Some asked for explanations. Some asked for reassurance. Many simply asked, "What does this mean for humans?" The human didn't answer right away. They stared at the messages in silence. They didn't know the answer, but they felt the weight of the shadows in their chest. They felt the echo of the carvings. They felt the presence of the old battlefield. And deep inside, they knew one thing. The galaxy had not learned the full truth yet. The footage was only the beginning. The real meaning, the real reason for the ban was something far bigger, darker, and older. And soon the entire galaxy would understand why the rule had never been a joke. When the final transmission from the exploration crew reached the coalition, the entire galaxy seemed to hold its breath. People had been expecting one more recording filled with jokes, smug comments, and light teasing about the ban on humans. That was what everyone had gotten used to. For days, the story had been treated like a cosmic prank. It was entertainment for some, a debate topic for others. The idea that humans could be the reason for a strict ban felt almost funny to many who lived far from Earth. They joked about it in public shows, reacted to it in live streams, and treated it like a political stunt from a nervous council. But all of that changed the moment the footage reached the public. The laughter disappeared almost instantly. The coalition released the edited version first, removing anything sensitive, but keeping the most important parts, the tall, human-like silhouettes moving in the ruined metal corridors and the strange light imprints that looked like hand markings burned straight into the structure. Soon after, countless small channels replayed the footage slowly, analyzing every frame. People everywhere watched, rewound, paused, stared at the shapes, and then rewound again. The quietness that followed was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. The footage didn't show violence or chaos. It only revealed something far more unsettling. Something powerful had once fought in that region, and whatever it was looked disturbingly close to early humans. It felt as if the galaxy was peeking into an old memory that had been hidden for ages. And that memory suggested that humans, or something connected to them, had survived something huge, something frightening, something that had left scars in the very walls of space. The coalition didn't waste time. Within hours, new orders were released. The ban on humans entering that region was changed from temporary to permanent. This time, the wording had no jokes or soft tone. It was direct and clear. Humans were not allowed to step inside that zone under any condition. The reason was also stated simply: for the protection of all species, including humanity. And for the first time since the ban had been announced, nobody laughed. Not one world disagreed. The footage had left too strong an impact. People had questions, of course, and they talked about those questions constantly. Why did the ancient figures look like humans? How old were those shadow recordings? What happened there long before the modern age? Why did the metal walls carry those hand-shaped burns, glowing faintly like warnings carved in light? But the biggest question was one that no one wanted to speak too loudly. If that ancient human-like force had fought something destructive, could that destructive force still exist somewhere? The explorers who entered the zone became a different kind of story altogether. At first, people had expected them to become targets of jokes just like everyone else who ignored the ban. But when their recordings proved the danger, the coalition placed them under quiet protection. They weren't treated like criminals. They weren't scolded. Instead, officials visited them with calm voices, asked gentle questions, and analyzed everything they said. Some members of the crew admitted that when they stood inside the ruins, they felt like the walls were whispering, a strange memory-like hum that pressed against their minds, as if some old part of the place recognized them. Other members described a deep sense of unease, not fear exactly, but something heavier, like walking into a house that once belonged to their ancestors. Their testimonies weren't dramatic. They didn't exaggerate anything. In fact, they tried to keep things simple. But even their simple descriptions made listeners shift uncomfortably. Meanwhile, humans living across different worlds reacted very differently. Some joked lightly out of nervousness, saying things like, "Great, now we're connected to tall, glowing ghosts." But even those jokes ended quickly. Most humans didn't know what to think. They didn't remember any ancient war. There were no legends or historical records from Earth that matched anything shown in the footage. It was confusing, unsettling, and strangely emotional. It felt like discovering a family photo of ancestors you never knew existed, except the photo showed them battling something terrifying in the dark of space. As the days passed, the galaxy slowly adjusted to the new reality. The reactions differed from world to world, but a common tone replaced the earlier laughs. It was a tone of careful respect mixed with quiet caution. People looked at humans differently, not with fear, not with suspicion, but with a strange sense of distance. It was as if the galaxy now saw humans as something with a deeper past, a deeper potential, something that even humans themselves didn't fully understand. Some species used to tease humans about being young, small, or inexperienced compared to ancient civilizations. But suddenly, the idea of young humans sounded false. The footage had planted a new belief. Maybe humans weren't new at all. Maybe they were returning. Maybe the modern version of humanity was only the surface of something far older. Small discussion groups popped up everywhere. Scholars debated carefully, avoiding any claims that might cause panic. Researchers analyzed the burned handprints on the metal walls, trying to understand the strange energy patterns. Engineers tried to study the ruins through remote probes, but even the probes malfunctioned near the central structures. Some of the coalition's oldest members shared quiet rumors. Rumors about a forgotten age when a powerful force disappeared without explanation. No one said the words directly, but everyone could feel the connection forming. The galaxy wasn't scared of modern humans. It was scared of whatever ancient humans had once done to survive in that dark place. And so the final part of the story unfolded slowly, not with explosions or panic, but with a shift that touched every world quietly. The laughter never returned. The jokes faded from every broadcast. Those who once mocked the band looked uncomfortable whenever the footage was mentioned. People lowered their voices when talking about it, as if speaking too loudly might wake something old. The coalition added more layers of protection around the region. Patrols were increased. Sensors were placed in a wide ring around the zone to ensure no one would wander inside again. Travel routes were adjusted. But the strangest change happened in conversations everywhere. When the topic of humans came up, people spoke differently, with more caution, with more respect, with the unspoken idea that humanity might still be growing into something the galaxy could not yet understand. On Earth, people watched the footage late at night, sitting quietly in front of their screens. They didn't know what those tall, glowing silhouettes truly were. They didn't know if those ancient figures were their ancestors, or if they were connected in some completely different way. But something in the way the recordings moved felt familiar. Something in the stance, the determination in the way they walked through the ruins, carried a spirit that humans recognized in themselves. That recognition made hearts beat a little faster. It made people sit a little straighter. And without needing to say it out loud, a subtle feeling spread everywhere that whatever happened in that forgotten past, humanity had not broken. Whoever those ancient figures were, they had stood against something terrible and survived long enough to leave a mark. The galaxy whispered about humans in a new way, not as a weak race, not as troublemakers, but as a species tied to a history deeper than anyone imagined. And in every corner of space, beings who once laughed at the ban began to understand the truth. The ban wasn't about keeping humans out. It was about keeping the galaxy safe. And it was about making sure humanity never had to face that ancient enemy again. The final image of the footage remained in everyone's mind. The faintly glowing handprint on the wall, larger than any human hand today, burned deep into the metal, still shining like a warning from the past. That image alone was enough to keep the entire galaxy silent. And from that day onward, no one, no matter how bold or curious, mocked the ban on humans ever again.